We've just had some terrific 10-minute talks. We're now going to get about a 4-minute reading, so we will beat the speed of those already fairly speedy talks. The reason for that, the reason I decided with Rona's agreement on this tactic was that I live in London. I can be seen and heard in, around the place quite easily. Our visitors are terrific poets, as you all know. They're rare visitors, or rare-ish visitors, to these shores, and these are the folks that you really need to hear today. So I am going to start with a tribute to Alice's work, which I followed since the early 1970s, or not the late 1960s. I'm not going to include my tribute to Charles because it's so long, it's still in the writing. So I'm going to read two pieces. The first of these is called From, quote, Alice, a Fragment, unquote. It's also a history of the 1970s to start with. Young men were, quote unquote, poets in their velvet looms. Reclining on that title, they press upon you copies of their poems or latest pamphlets. Bower birds with self-reflecting gifts churned out on duplicators. But nesting instincts smartly swung to angry pecks, then flitting off. From lofty habitats, sheer waters, vanguard wings sliced over the river with its shored-up banks, miscalled, quote, the mainstream, unquote, down which a very few could merrily row their boat when life was but a dream, the dream of revolution. I didn't want, quote, a voice, unquote, myself, far less that, quote, woman's voice, unquote. My feminism fled such retro-femininity as it then appeared. Not womanly my shameless hopes, so prices were to pay as usual, yet these weren't on display. I scraped the lining of my skinny purse through harsher miseries than carping verse. But St. Mark's seraphim rose to blaze with Alice fearless among them, sure-footed in the luminous confiding of her calling. So I'm going to finish with a poem about a genre that it should find its place in today. It's about the movies. It's called Beggars of Life, which is the title of a movie starring Louise Brooks. In fact, the whole thing is probably irritatingly studded with references direct to directors and stars in movies. It doesn't matter. It must not matter. It shouldn't matter if you don't happen to pick up on any of these, although probably this is also a cinematic audience. Any obscure references that anybody wants to look up can be found pedantically enumerated and clarified in the footnotes in the back of the collection called Lyrics that this piece comes from. Beggars of Life. The movie is over, yet the screening reels on through your eyes. You've left the cinema, but you're still seeing in graceful Ozu or in kindly Corre Ada, or in pleats, in blood, or plain rose. You're passing by nondescript shop fronts, now floodlit in scarlet, thanks purely to Coutard's lens. Or on other occasions, pearly sorrow has slipped down these pavements where men lope in torrents of rain that could flatten that one bar they want. It must be a plywood prop. In the dark, you'd been watching a storm that will not die down in the light. So, how come a film's world outlook keeps radiating from your own eyeballs? Not its set, least of all its ideas, but its whole feel, its tinge or angles. Louise flicked her bob until it refashioned your mop to shine by the end of Beggars of Life. As in Burnett's Killer of Sheep, an of, in the title, holds promise. You too are of your last viewed movie, generously unspooling outside itself, while subtitles flash up unasked, like Farhadi's captions on Judgment. Quote, each side wants to understand the other, but their situation compels them to fight. Unquote. You wish. Heels pivot, or are clicked in the elongated spans between people. Your feet were slipped into other seamed nylons, then eased into kid shoes. It was Me Too in La Notte, and that dawn grew milky sour. Maybe Martel's lucid camera has cornered you, shut tight in her car, its rolled-up windows bouncing the sunlight, so inward you'd scarcely see out, bar a blurry column of what might be human figures. Quote, grief, unquote, is too bland a word, and I've always found it irritating, all the more so since he died, but I couldn't really say why. Although, movie-loving spectators, I can read your diagnosis of why, embossed in bold on your faces. Return to us. You subtler Jean Moreau, right doubter, sulk hotly on the number 19 bus, nudging its way through a right smog of implication. Step forth, doe-eyed Monica. Let your wide, freckled cheekbones gleam again out of your shadows. But that beauty's long sunk in her aching monochrome. Brilliantined heads are still hauling the length of canals of string vests. While no probation officer will lecture you again, a working class man would have battered you. You should be thankful he's only trying to remove the children, quote unquote. We'll have no more, quote, in love, unquote, though the moon be, etc. The incensed air looms rich with pondering saxes. To be confessional must mean there's something to confess. But what is that thing's true name? Nico, Chanteuse remixed Velvety, remarked, I wasn't happy when I was beautiful. It's you who are in the wrong, you who were both born in it and born into it. But that's wrong too. Hell-bent on thinking the best of others, you might yet turn out to be kind. You wouldn't, quote, draw the consequences, unquote, wanting no consequences but reliable love. Twilight sanks blue on the terrace. The clinks of the party dim, as long, lush looks pan out across olive groves, branched like squirrel hair brushes, handy enough for rouge. Neither, quote, the male, unquote, nor the, quote, unquote, female gaze, but the gaze of the movie itself, suffusing your vision until it wears off, after loaning its clips of 10 divine enough minutes. Then, back, my dollar daily outlook comes. I'll fight against letting it blanket me in its colorized re-releases of the out-of-the-blue cruelty of someone I trusted. I've sat through that movie before. Too often have lain on its cutting room floor. Still, here is René, or filmic joy. It is good to be old, though it's perilous. Thank you.
Thank you. What a great last line. Next up, we have Charles Bernstein, who is from actual New York. He, again, as I'm sure you know, he's the author and editor of many books, around 50 books, including collections of poetry, essays, pamphlets, libretti, collaborations, most recently Topsy Turvy, Pitch of Poetry, both of which came out with the University of Chicago Press. His work was the subject of the Poetry of Idiomatic Insistences, edited by Paul Bove, and that was the full 2021 issue of Boundary 2. He was the editor of Language magazine and the co-founder of the Poetics program at the University of New York in Buffalo, directs Penn Sound, and is Donald T. Reagan Professor Emeritus of English and Comparative Literature at the University of Pennsylvania. He's also the winner of the 2019 Bollinger Prize from Yale for Lifetime Achievement in Poetry, and a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and has traveled a hugely long way to be here with us, so thank you, Charles.
I want to thank Rona again for bringing us all together and say what an honor and a privilege, really, and pleasure to read with Denise and Alice Notley. It's great for me. As to this title, I was very excited because New York schools, you know, as a native New Yorker, I went to many New York schools. Elementary school, I went to junior high school, and I also went to high school in New York. So I think it's very good representing New York schools. So this first poem was written on September 3rd, 2017, the day that John Ashbery died. And of course for him. The title is If Sappho Were a UFO and I Were a Genie, we dance on the surface of Pluto and dine at Ipanema Beach in Rio. Nothing much else glues me to this shredded fabric of the marvelous, on sale all these years with no buyers or just 3 authorized sellers. I made it almost to Mars, then went home. Too much mud in those parts. And I missed the smell of home ground, even when it turned out to be imported. So the rest of the reading is an excerpt from something that I recently finished, and it's called Pre-Owned Poems. My heart has been broken so many times, I think it would hurt more if it was put back together. A good poet throws nothing out except the eggshells and coffee grounds. A great poet doesn't even throw those out. Sunk into a morass of my own unmaking. I don't think you ever start over, just start again. Form is content by other means. Where are the hiding places hiding? Leonard Cohen, Beautiful Losers. Redemption is recognition the present has passed, coming awake in its wake. The kind of poetry I want intensifies sense in its futile effort to negate social reality. Don't trust anyone over 30 or under 40. Topicality is the mirage of quicksand. Unless other voices wake us, we drown. I wouldn't join a group that agreed with what I said. The dead cannot return, but we can tune into their echoes so that they can come to life in us. Poetry is not a second language, it is the first. For all else follows. It is the way we travel across time, or better to say, travel in time, dwelling in the nick, for Carolyn Bergvall's The Metal. All shtick is local. When you address everyone like they say, you address no one. But not even no one. But those no ones seem to know not. A melting pot is to multicultural homogeneity as a bricklayer is to cement. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Fool rotted. Leonard Ware, Sidney Bechet. Years scribbling day and night, flash awards, public light, does not make a poet quite. Give a person the truth and they will put on a mask. Sponsored, topsy-turvy, newly unmastered, socially sourced poems made from 100% recycled materials, matured in seasoned oak pitch, charred before filling to import a piquant, indefinable nuttiness. Line breaks are thought's inflection. I break for art, in the biblical sense of the word. Write not what you know, but what you can find out. Some see a glass half empty. Others see it completely empty. Perception is 9/10 of the law. What a topsy-turvy world. We tread on our heads while shepherds are bred to be fleeced by the sheep. Calves rust cooks. Ponies ride on phonies. And the right to be taught freedom of thought is toasted with Catholic Negronis. That's after Heine's Verkehrte Welt. Waiting for my stomach to get its sea legs. Names ache. Maggie O'Sullivan. As my father liked to say, you can't serve soup with a slotted spoon. In other words, I don't want poems that can't hold their aesthetic water. An error of the ear, an ear for the era. You are going to have a good time whether you like it or not. You've received this email because of your interest in Panacea Productions. If you don't wish to get updates from us, please reply to this email so we can add you to our verified addresses and continue getting internet marketing. Not worth the vapor it's printed on. There's not enough coffee in the coffee. Sponsored. Topsy-turvy. Quote, a more impudent attempt at humbugging the public with gimmicks and tricks has never been exercised. Immaculado Schwartz, Academy of American Poetry Writing Programs. The influence of anxiety. Sometimes you need to take the horns of a dilemma without the bull. Don't amortize my love. The next morning I woke up groggy. It took me a few minutes to realize where I was, and even then I couldn't be sure. There was an empty bottle of gin in the bed. I tried to shave, but my right hand was shaky, and the mirror looked cracked. I called downstairs for a pot of coffee, then started to write this entry before it would turn to a blur. The phone rang. It was you. Are Jews a folly of God, or God a folly of Jews? After Nietzsche. Fairness without justice is tyranny. The syncretic precedes the authentic, just as sublimity precedes beauty, for Will Alexander. Distributed rhythm and the overall sound as melody, Julius Hempel via Marty Ehrlich. At the end of the day, you have to decide what kind of poet you are. A big heart and a small brain. A big brain and a small heart. I've got affect. You've got emotion. I've got feeling. You've got identity. I've got voices. You've got voice. Taste maps our syndrome, our sin-drone. As dog whistles become pig whistles, I just drink my whiskey. My first loyalty is to those who oppose and actively resist the Republican Party, USA, Bolsonaro and company, the Ayatollah and his guard, Tao Mao Do, Putin, etc. You're only young once, if that. You're only old once, too, at most. When I was young, I felt middle-aged. Odd. When I was young, I felt middle-aged. Old, I see that was exactly the sign of my youth. Diversity training. When the two of them were going to sit down at the table, the farmer insisted that the nobleman should sit at the head of the table. And the nobleman also insisted that the farmer should sit there because in his house, his orders had to be followed. But the farmer, who was proud of his courtesy and manners, refused to do it, until the nobleman became angry, and putting both hands on his shoulder, he forced him to sit down. Sit down, you imbecile. Wherever I sit will be the head of the table. Don Quixote, translated by Edith Grossman. Responsibilities are for parents, teachers, and citizens, not for poets. Poetry abhors responsibility to the degree it is infatuated with responsiveness, for Robert Duncan. All poetry is loco. Anti-binary is binary. There are no absolutes, but there ought to be. I prefer to see non-Jews playing Jews in the movies. I don't think a Jew can play a Jew in a convincing way. Look into the future. When we were able to have non-humans play humans, I think we will find the same thing. Before starting your poem, check to be sure there is enough available darkness. If you've got the time, we've got the beer. Johann Gottlieb Fichte, born May 19th, 1762, to a family of ribbon makers. No good poem goes unpunished. The Literary Academy is too often governed by mechanisms of discipline, control, and hierarchy, often while ostensibly critiquing discipline, control, and hierarchy. The desire seems to be to turn the humanities into a kind of pseudoscience, but by restricting references to a small group of professionally sanctioned works or styles, which is more the product of faddish hegemony and rationalization than any engagement with science. Just because someone is anti-Semitic is no reason to assume they are not. My optimism gives me the resilience to reject hope. Sponsored, Pre-Owned Poems is brought to you by the Center for Avant-Garde Comedy and Stand-Up Poetry, the First Church of Poetic License, and listeners like you. Proust. One can only imagine what's absent. Just so. One cannot imagine what is present. Maybe the Orphic is not creating the world imagined, but acknowledging it. I imagine nothing, but am imagined by it. Melancholy is grief interrupted, toggled to stay alive in experience. Damaged goods are better than rancid ones. Damage, at least, is in sight of repair. Universalism is relativism with a Christianizing fate. Reb O'Boy was asked if trife could be included in a poem. Poetry is neither kosher nor trife. It is commentary. People who like that aperçu also like this one. Don't sue me just because you don't like the soup. John Felstner told me of plans for a Norton Anthology of Jewish American Literature. What will you include of Stein? We're not sure if we will include her. Isn't that like an anthology of Irish literature without Joyce? The left hand must not know even what the left hand is doing. If there is a place for comfort poem, there is also a place for a discomfort poem. Comfort in poems quickly strays. Discomfort stays. I bow down to no one, not even gods, but I'll talk to anybody, even devils. Everything is relative. You mean we're all relatives? No, we're all different. Yes, my relatives are like that. It is just because of the crisis of social, racial, and economic justice, of the environment, the crisis for democracy, that poetry must go beyond the superficial and reductive and find new ways of reflecting on the world we share, so that we may change the world without submitting to it. The struggle is over reality. Who owns it? Who controls it? The only thing worse than aesthetics is its absence. How many words are there for snow? It's an exaggeration to say a baker's dozen in the language of indigenous northern people, for whom snow covers the slopes, covers the slopes. 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 As Robert Grenier has it in this poem from Sentences, where each snow has a different inflection. Snow covers the crest too, but Grenier is more transfixed by the O in slope, snow, and covers. It turns out that though snow is snow, there are a variety of expressions for different types or conditions of snow. Though as I write this in summer, there is no snow now on the slopes or peaks, and the snow of yesterday is nowhere to be found. Danton be damned. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, there are 24 words for slush, most of them unprintable in the New York Times. The future is never future. It's not even present. No more Russian dressing on my Caesar salad. The presence of what's past, the past in what's present. I can't get past the past any more than I can break loose from time. But in the meantime, I mark the present with inadvertent rhymes. Historicism abhors relativism by framing universalism. Truth is a local product of time, not an export product. What we've been forced to confront, so long denied, is American unexceptionalism. Truth is wounded by time. Its blood is historical materiality. Its scar, art. Truth wounds time. That's its music. David Weiss Halevi marked the historical strands of Talmud to remove original in the sense of antecedent intent. An abomination, say Haradim, the fundamentalists. An abomination, Weiss, they say, enters the domain of the holy and expresses the poisonous and destructive thought that the transmitters of the Talmud changed the text, not even knowing that they did so. Both sides cleave to a mirage of originary authority. Perhaps the Talmud and any other reflection on ethical, spiritual, and aesthetic matters by Jews are part of a dynamic, ongoing process where truth is found in revision. Such a perspective wrests final authority from historical records. For most observant Jews, such antinomianism would be not Judaism at all, but only again revealing an originary fault line between Judaism and Jews. The place of refuge is no refuge. This is the story of the Jews. Sponsored. Topsy-turvy. Select. Don't settle. Angels brush against splattered brushwork. Gory purple eyes loom out amidst hearts pierced by arrows. R.E. Susan B. Spare the child and spoil the rod. Even a broken pot is right twice a day. I am for imaginative intelligence and the intelligence of imagination. Social justice is not hitting my head on the nail. Lyric shame. You should be ashamed you're not writing the way I do. When you do that, you are trying to shame me, and I won't tolerate it. The memory of memory. The hope for hope. Discretion is 99 44th 100% of the law. What happens in the poem stays in the poem. Sponsored. Topsy-turvy. All work done on premise. Magic is to poetry what yoga is to birds. The poem-like language has an agency that is different from mine. I don't pursue the poem, it pursues me. Silence is time without rhythm. Claude Ray, as you know, in Conversation. Everything happens for a reason, and sometimes that reason is no reason. I feel so gay in a melancholy way. Oscar Hammerstein, too. Sitting in the sun, watching the pig run. Neither nor, no. Truth only revealing itself in the form of error, Richard Foreman. And those that came to scan remain to sway. Poetry, essay, translation, while distinct genres from the woven texture of both my own poesis and that of the traditions that I continue, the activities are the activities are complementary. I am not an advocate of breaking down genres, even if I sometimes write poem essays. It's more a duck-rabbit problem. Can you read it either way, and the work is different on the choice you make? But best not to read it as both. I prefer the possibility that one frame excludes the other. At this point, you will no doubt wonder whether, after all, the world's so topsy-turvy that it always needs to be made turvy-top, after Robert Musil. Poetry's freedom is not in its social policy positions, but its imaginary enactments. A poem can have a power and agency that the person writing the poem is denied. Poetry, especially conventional poetry, often embodies and celebrates popular understandings. But the kind of poetry I want views its forms as subaltern, a dissent against dominant and standardizing, normalizing modes of conduct, thought, and writing. I resist the designation avant-garde as well as experimental. In their place, I have come up with a series of sometimes comic terms for the radical, non-conventional, or inventive. Oppositionality, dysraphism, the pataquarical, idiolectical, eco-poetic, social formalism. Avant-garde suggests closed ranks and zeal, and relies on a notion of forwardness or advance or progress that is too Euclidean. Time is not linear. I don't like schools or fixed groups or rigid doctrines or formulas. It's not to say that I am not enmeshed in all those things. Avant-garde as a term is not avant-garde enough. It seems vaguely quaint, like a club. I prefer the concave, open, and loosely associational to the fixed, phallic, penetrating, and convex. I don't much like community either as a way of describing art alliances. Community, of course, it's very important and vital and all those good things. But it has the same problem as empathy. It relies a bit too much on people like us, our friends. Exogamy precedes oxogamy. Excuse me, that's how I mispronounced my own made-up word. Exogamy precedes exogamy. Exogamy. Truth wounds time. That's its music. As loyal as I am to my poetry friends, I am more loyal to the fantasy of poetry, which makes for difficulties. I am nothing without my friends and family, but this nothing is the ground of my poetry and my love. Insert $1 to illuminate this passage. Coins only. We can either learn to live with difference, or we will die the same. The necessity of unnaming. Echo. The unnaming of necessity. You took the mouth out of my words. Yesterday's omelet is tomorrow's bride. We've got to take the bull by the horse. At the end of the day is a beginning. I don't write Jewish, but Jewish won't stop writing me, after Thomas Sayers Ellis. Make it old, Hegis Bonvicino. Zen cone, Zen cone. Why empty what is empty, or fill what is full? What is empty is full, and what is full is empty. Only a fool confuses the two. Each sunset, I look to see if my dead body is floating down the river. Appearances notwithstanding, I am not a performing seal. My being is not just human. Once they let people like me in, it loses its allure. Almost everyone disappoints me. I disappoint myself, but not you. And Lord God said, I am. Silence inside of silence, space inside of space, shadow inside of shadow, loss inside of loss, fold inside of fold, cracks inside of cracks, mutation inside of mutation, multiplicity inside one, fantasy inside imagination, sound inside sense, difference inside difference, absence inside presence, the discarded inside waste, finitude inside infinity, insincerity inside sincerity, helplessness inside capacity, noise inside music, figuration inside abstraction, swerve inside trajectory, failure inside success, non-existence inside existence, the ungiven inside the given, emptiness inside the desert, the wild inside wilderness. And not even that, not yet that, not ever that. Reputations are a tricky thing. Consider an early version of the Tao Te Ching, translated by Robert Henricks. Favor is really disgrace. It is like being in bondage. Receiving favor puts you in a dependent position. If you get it, it's like being in bondage. If you lose it, it is like being in bondage. Or as Nobel Prize winning singer-songwriter Bob Dylan put it, when you've got nothing, you've got nothing to lose. I've run out of bridges to burn. For several years, I've been looking for a misplaced book by a poet whose work I did not know. When I find the book, I put it in a nearly inaccessible place on my bookshelf, satisfied. I didn't want to read the poems, but to locate them. People ask me, Rabbi, is it an obligation for Jews to go to a Chinese restaurant on Christmas? No, I tell them, it's not an obligation, it's a tradition. The obligation is keeping the tradition. A rabbi and a priest meet in a bar. What's your worst transgression? Asked the rabbi. I had sex with an underage couple. She got pregnant, so I got her an abortion. How about you? I ate a bologna sandwich with cheese. Attempts to defend poetry from unconventionality are applauded loudest by those who hate poetry. Opacity is the parasol of the mind in motion and soul in action. What's there to be saw, I saw, but I never could see what was only heard. Echolocation, I find who I am bouncing sounds off who you are. Heard echoes are sweet, but unheard echoes will get you every time. The act of hearing with your own ears. That's no sensibility. That's my consciousness. This place is lit up like Luna Park, my father would say, turning off the lights. Hope is a grave. My son doesn't like it when I keep repeating things, but I'm never sure if he heard me. As Rabbi Silken Sailing says, you can bring a fish to water, but you can't make it sing. Rabbi Occam, the law of the human is not the same as the law of the fish. Rabbi Bat Shalom, birds fly to a different feather. Rabbi Ignatz, leave well enough alone. Not double consciousness, but plural consciousness. I use comedy to leaven the harshness of historical judgment and to foment a dialectical turning away that allows ever new tunings toward, truth blinds, but even worse binds, in which case it is truth both evermore and nevermore. I hear you, but I'm not listening. Jesus tries on a crown of thorns in the mirror. Do you think it makes me look too Jewish? A joke of Ralph Mannheim by his daughter, Kate Mannheim. There's a poem in Topsy Turvy called No, Then, There, Then. Gig Ryan in the Australian Book Review recognized Augustine, echoed by Gertrude Stein's There's No There, There, as the source of the title. Non enim erat tunc, ubi non erat tempus. No then truly was, where no time was. So maybe no there then, when no time there. Augustine imagines the absence of a God who is the foundation for time. Echo Wallace Stevens in The Plain Sense of Things. The absence of imagination had itself to be imagined. There's no here. Nothing without imagination or the imagination of nothing. Two birds land on a wire, Robin and Dodo. What are you doing on my wire? Asked Dodo. It's not your wire. It doesn't have your name on it, said Robin. Whatever has no name written on it is mine, Dodo replied. Then is the wind yours, the sky, the clouds? Only if I am sitting on them, like I'm sitting on this wire. Then is the wire mine too when I am sitting on it with you? Asked Robin. Yes, and so is the sky yours when you fly through it, the clouds when you touch them, the wind when it blows over you. I am the queen and king of my own imagination, which I exercise with sovereignty, citizen of mind, subject of none. Inside hope is despair, while despair is hope suspended. Never say hope. Never stop hoping. We sell boxes, don't we? Everything is a disappointment, and if it's not a disappointment, that's disappointing too. I can seem crazy, even for a crazy person. Maxwell Clark. I'm for quantum identity politics. Identity is a plural event. We need to change the settings. An Afro-pessimist and a Judeo-pessimist walk into a bar. Think of the millions incinerated last century by Western civilization trying to find its true self, said the Afro-pessimist. Think of the millions yet to be dehumanized in the century ahead, said the Judeo-pessimist. God speeds, away or after. Perhaps you may feel, as I do, almost powerless. That almost in almost powerless is where we meet. It's the place of our solidarity, for Benaz Amani. We is an other, many other. I is not you or even me. The truth of the matter is revealed in hermetic texts that are long lost, and the problem is that it's a secret that they are lost. I hope I am not spilling the beans, but when I say I mean them. Ethnicity is a trap if you take it as an end rather than a given. The mind is a blazing that gives off embers. Will Alexander, inscription to me in The Contortionist Whispers. Make it new is so yesterday, and make it the same like totally today. That's why yesterdays and tomorrows are necessary resistance to the tyranny of the times. Poetry is dead because people saying that are killing it. The kinds of poetry I want are dead to those who hate poetry. In that hatred is poetry's freedom, for Susan Stewart. What you remember is what you can't forget. The only thing permanent is evanescence, and that's illusory. If somebody won't do it, maybe nobody will. Beep, beep, toot, toot, la, da, 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 beep, beep, toot, toot, la, da, 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 da. Sid Robin, Andrews Sisters. May flights of mescal take you to your quest. Not yet.
Wow, thank you. Thanks. Our final poet of the day, Alice Notley, joins us from Paris, but has lived all over, grew up in California in the Mojave Desert, spent time in Chicago and Essex, in New York, of course. I think on the back of Grave of Light, Alice is described as formerly associated with the New York School, so she's kind of a graduate, I guess. She's edited a number of books by Ted Berrigan and Doug Oliver, edited the magazine Chicago in the 70s, with Doug Oliver edited the magazines Scarlet and Gare du Nord in the 90s. Has received, all kinds of prizes, including the LA Times Book Award, the Griffin Prize, the Ruth Lilly Prize, the Academy of American Poets Lenore Marshall Prize. Is probably widely known for The Descent of Alette, Mysteries of Small Houses. Recent works include Benediction, Certain Magical Acts, and For the Ride. And I think most recently we've got early works and the sixth book, The Speak Angel series, which I can see Alice holding both of. one of which is quite large, published by Phonograph, and they're gorgeous books, so do get hold of copies of those. Alice is also a collagist and a visual artist, and you can find her artwork in the book Runes, of course. So, Alice.
I think I need
Shall I
some
turn
lighting.
some more light on?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me just do that. And that's water for you.
Okay. The light's changing. We now have college room light. I was invited to present these two books, but together it's like about 900 pages. So, and this book contains the first 4 books I ever wrote, plus some other books from the same time period, which is my 20s. And this is something I wrote in my 60s. So I'm going to read a few poems from my 20s and a few poems from this book, which I have no way to describe to you, so you'll just have to dig it without knowing what it is. So I'm going to sip some water and then see if I'm still standing after this long, wonderful day. This poem is the first poem in my MFA thesis at Iowa. Courage is the only root of beauty. Head doesn't go all the way into a, why don't you break on November 2nd? I need a birthday book, but what I'm doing is having my stomach be in knots. Accuse myself of sizing up poets. Missing talks to himself too much in a very talking to himself way. Humility, arrogance, and other roots. Also, he's a great. Use self-sad loosely as model. Result should be something like high. Music is simply trying things this morning. This is the book on the back, the poem on the back cover. 3. I'm so weak, and rain again instead of noble anger. I cry some and talk like a fish, underwater at little bubbles, words breaking. Because we love each other, noble stands against each other are out of the question, not of the question. Everyone's crying today. The baby and I, the sea is the sky. Emerging out of another spell, there's a circle, concentric circles like bangle bracelets slipping over in and out of each other. Maybe I'm supposed to spend this life finding out by finding out about not succeeding. No, I don't believe like that yet. I'm writing, holding a baby, and I realize myself, I haven't a self, and me wanting to impress you with my universal and wise and crystalline, beautiful flowering and form. Oh, my person. My person is smears of prints from all the touchings, layers of prints, right down to the one fist of crystal. I mean the one that smashes through like death and power. Latticed culotte and starry blouse. What one wants, of course, is the clothes to contain one which are one, flexibly enough for the breast's ease, somehow aesthetically accommodating to the elbow's awkwardness. If one stoops as a heron might, it smacks of truly amazing grace, grace that's a tender smack in the face. One wants one's own form of clothes. One wants it in bright colors that are a duller felt background for nuances play of face, infinite polka dots, stripes, stars, yet a softer polyphonic line to those nuances, and at the same time one eschews that vocabulary strides forth in essence irregardless, who has borne a baby and married a husband, and is suddenly skittish within form,
would punch holes in it, make monster faces at it? Is it to test it in every way? Just it one day, it is simply seen as a privilege to be one for long. And so specifically, how scary, how exciting a privilege to expand to the fullness of the specific one. There is work to do it, a letting go constantly to find form. Every muscle must relax in the working. The eyes caress the clothes in a mirror without looking. The skin feels them like a friend's admiring look when both people are comfortable in the admiration. One is a connection, and one is a sun, facing sun. The rays of both one. One has lost the thought thread and is simply breathing in bed with one's husband, latticed culotte and starry blouse glowing from the closet. That's pretty good. 2 for November. 1. Remembering Novembers, all the Novembers are this leafy room. And I'm the one in the carriage, over the rustle and under the rustle of leaves. Under the sky flowing, I'm the one. I'm a solemn, solemn baby. I'm nobody the baby. And I'm the nobody pushing the baby. We float through gold, leafy rooms. Almost enough. It's almost when it was enough. We search each other out via oceanic eyes. No, we're just taking a walk, and we're almost home, and the silver handle is cold in my hands, and I'm tired of flowing blue and gold. 2. All music, when you come to think, but to be released, too short a day for later. Later, when the various rains will come, when the size and weight of it will be known, when intelligence will be brilliance, more radiance, radiance, when I am the world's light as you, when I have wrenched out all my substance, then I can sit on the porch with my baby in the bronzed autumn light. Little green song. I float out the window over common green, amid supper time. It's warm to be under a cloud clear to each other. In our atmosphere, tensely stars admit to being mirrors. I'm expensive, but you can afford me. I wrote this in Putney in 1973. The Queen's in church. Last night, I dreamed one of her almost beheaded me. I thought, why not? Then I'll know what it's like for later. And then thought, no, of course not. She then beheaded a young girl who was dutiful, casual. Everyone's wearing a tiara, and the Queen herself is being coronated again, and with a girdle. Once I dreamed a queen said she would behead me unless I told her the story of Samson. I told her that story with pleasure. In fact, I later became a girl Samson in a pink prom dress. I wore it well in spite of it. Become your liege man of life and limb in honor of an unknown English holiday. Being a male, female is like a cup of engineering. Dancing keeps you fit for. We give our bodies to these houses and these houses to each other, the Queen's city. Do you think I will know true terror in my time? When the phone rings, the Queen wakes to start fresh. Every object of phone that rings, consort, 2 sleepers, 1 bottle codeine, mountainously bearded, I press my eyes shut there and dream a queen. But now I'm awake, totality, limber, colors spreading, scarlet and aquamarine. What is taupe? Startled by worm in throat, Q, Q, Q. Sandals chatting, boots presiding like advances. The worm is sweet, milky tea, clear, comprehensive, authoritative, like a clear-edged in its roundness green bottle, like formic acid, like the Queen's white nose, like black boots with laces, like myriad round mirrors, perfectly small, like my flesh, my curved head, my lashes straight, like unshaved legs, spice pits. I pressed my eyes shut there, now open here, so sexy, the solidity of things. Samson, solid, pink dress, ordinariness. No, an ordinary kind of formality, dated in fashion, strong from my style. No, I was observing the occasion that arose more and less than it, and what was dated is being old. The two sleepers, one's hand on other's hip, no, on white sheet on hip, in the blue dark sheet glow. You know how a bedroom looks like the dark, cool and dark and white. How can we leave it? Well, it leaves us every morning, for they are not we things. That is their beauty. I think, but I never think that. I think them. I think them away, thinking no color, morbid thoughts. How could I? How could I? The queen was almost right about my head, but now she won't be, is it? Not when I've got it like black and white, like a clear edged in its roundness bottle, green, like formic acid. That was my 20s. There are thousands more pages. This is a book composed of 6 books, and I wrote it between 2013 and 2016, the end of 2016. Is that right? And then I tinkered with it for about 1,000 years. And then a guy decided to publish it. And so now I have this book. So I'm going to read like the first few stanzas so you'll know what it's about, and then I'm going to just read like a couple of poems and then a long poem, and that'll be my reading. Okay. It's called the Speak Angel series. And there was a poem I forgot to read in there that had the word angel in it. I was going to make fake continuity. So this is how book 1 begins. Our words are what is, they say, what we make. They don't stand for the universe. What you see as much stands for them. Reality in the thicknesses shimmery. We are in here, and each presents a face, eyes closed, but is the only conscious there really is. I'm listening. I'll interpret for everyone dead or alive and make the words radiate. The story's so thick with breaking up layers that you have to be in it, new-eyed, feeling your way. The winds. I forgot your story. You're going to overpower me. A mind is a wind, the ancestor of any mind who thinks it's contemporary. The body presses on you until you leave it. You're another body. All along, why was I there? It's the only way. The soul me, just me, torn out gold, and outside it, activity. We are all torn out gold. She lay on the bed old, her hair in spangled braids. First I couldn't find her, and I couldn't find who I was. You need a red one to get into the house of our identity, said someone. And who approved the secret, I asked. Later, no one knew it. Now no one knows it at all. You need green or red rectangles to get into the house of knowledge. I am the house of knowledge, I say. Then put on more layers, someone else says, or they'll see how transparent you are. I am the one you think I am, and also another. The dying body lay in braids, with her soul showing. I'm speaking in my own language. Spangled with the breaking up of gold, they come to get me. It's beautiful in death. It's substantial. People with jars of being, animals with eyes, rocks with identity. No one alive permitted to see until now. Would you like to know something? Samson. This morning, everyone dead was in my room. Why are you all here? Didn't exactly say. Asleep, I saw a book open, page of writing I couldn't decipher, amorphous, undelineated. They said it said Samson's Divisions, an Erst book, or maybe an Erst book. I understand this immediately to mean that I am Samson. A pedantic voice said, there is barely a difference. He stopped. I think it's between matter and soul, or Samson and me, or the two pillars when he brought down the house of the Philistines, or between the Philistines and Jews. The book contained a photo of transitional movements, a bicycle race. Samson stood between everyone there. Do I have to die blind when I bring down the building? We think not. Just bring it down, they say. It's a rotten organization and intellectual structure one's in everywhere. Divide yourself from it and bring it down now. You could speak the language of origination, destroy the state. All governments are decadent. Destroy their house and goods. Anyone's. Bring it all down along with their trivial poetics, their linguistic imbecilities, and their cars. No doubt you will. Do this, topple any man in your way. You're blind now, so you can't see them. That's the wrong page. There's no way to tell you anything about this. The second book is called Opera, and it's very strange. And so this is just a little poem from it. I'm going there, torn, or tree. For I lay in the box of my artifact, empty not only grief, but anything. I am not starring, signals. It is matter-like, but not beast-like. In memory, I'm starting to recall us here, or torn off from futures hateful. The wind, the remembered blue trees, the black ocean. I remember that my insides were a gold tangle string. It was the instrument of me. Play it, lead us to where we and stood beginning, being it the creator, the materiality, and the after it. It was always made of words, sodden or fair, sudden or far, buds that don't have to grow. I was molecular, told you to join me, reached thought-wise for you across so we could hold it together. What? The void. Yes, but we were already in it. It's ours. It's paste on that I just lead so we can, and you will hear and see it equivalent to you, afraid to be irregulars in beauty, chaos, ours. Memory, real memory. I say, then see a page before me, an unknown voice says, my lady, my past lady, my most interrupted lady wind. And she went past her great-grandmother, into the trees. Oh, Jim and Rachel, it wasn't the wind you knew, it was mind. And then I was in sadness. I enter in chaos, the part that's all sadness, sad of what I ask. As my pace slows, you can't outspeed this melancholy. Or would I go on living? Or would I go on dead? We told you we were often sad, my father says. It is of what we would be healed. And of what are you sad? Your own deeds, still, I ask? And of aggression, prevailing in our origin, our primal blast. You have spoken of changing that description, but have you? I am doing so now. I am close to it, I say, to it as event here, but the sadness pervades me. I'm in trouble to get to it, the X-marked. Can there be such? Won't be well defined in chaos. I must lose more of my own articulate phrasing in order to get to it which denies me. Sadder, slowly on, pass through one's pain's recall. Was it real, Jory or John? And then I will read this poem, and then you can go home. This is called What is the Form? Love is the Form. One says, flee the beginning, it's too frightening. You don't know what you look like or whose thoughts you're thinking. I'm convinced I've come from nowhere, an inhuman soul. One says, look at me, and what shall I look with? The voices in my head translated into plain or alien phrases that I see and feel with, I don't know what you're saying. Mobbing it's called, and the wind, when the phrases run wild, I draw them on the page, I inscribe you at the beginning. I can't seem to remember what I'm doing here or where I was. I may be in a state of insane premonition because I'm leading you or saving you, having pre-seen the moment when you might be violent. I smiled, and instead you smiled back. The dead aren't violent, whom I am with, who go with me, skilled at being dead. They continue to invent the diction of the dead, the collage of the new death made of the known but now different. Though I can't remember where I've been, where I'm going, I'll try to change every moment I'm in if I must. I will change your sense of the beautiful and elegant, I insist, calling back steps ahead, that what now comes is not future, but a collage of pressed, colored winds, the vocalese we are. I've told you I'm changing it, advancing into enlightenment, changing how you were once a universe, and now you are what? What's a soul? What's anything? This language will resist us. Is it even ours or us? I must turn to face you suddenly. I know I must turn and say, in this place of our room of all, on the escarpment of ice and lights, it has been given to me to be your, I know no other term, savior. I don't know what it means, but I face you. I couldn't turn round before, though I knew it would come to this, as if harsh light on a desert tree, as if I would leave my home forever or my former interior, as if you would mock me, sweetheart, with your deadwood eyes, as if the solar winds parched my face and my mind, though I bled from my forehead and the wound between thumb and forefinger. Didn't I previously deal with our sorrow? Isn't this an ancient film shown over the new creation? Who are you, you say? But do I know? Yes, this is what I do. There was nothing left for it. You have found me. What does it mean? Whatever happens, you aren't sad because of this. Remember, there is one alive, carries it with her, the web of misfortune. The desiccating veil is just a trick of your own eye, perhaps. I've signed up for everything. Now I turn and paste it on, stumbling. Stand upright with the glue of it slightly pink, affix it. Wearing my remarkable crown that's transformed repeatedly, thorns to ribbon to slender coronet. I never wanted, try to end. It can't. In Paris or St. Mark's and First or on the star Alphard. I am nothing but invisible essence, my first kiss. I was only what we are, then I became less, didn't I? From spirit become flesh, then degraded into suffering. I abased and strange here, I who identify with no one, have no verb now but lead, paste on or save everyone. What is saved then of the others who love each other corporeally? The blessing must be death. No, there should be another one. For in this earth life I pass through, I'm transported mid-moment, any moment to death's grace or saved, thus you are too. How embarrassed you must be, you say, to speak like this. It's when I'm embarrassed that I know I've arrived. Where I lead you what our paste is and what we paste on are one. But now that's the dead pasting. No, the live too. How muscular I sound. The tripartite leading of those who can follow the snowed down upon, the rained on, the perpetually discovered by other substance. Love falls on you wherever you are, if you can perceive it. I stand where the language envelops me true. I bleed for it. Yes, I gave up to you the fact that I've bled for it, and so for you, anyone. Animals suffer among a universe of apparent unsimilars. Perhaps we are sacrificial, sacramental, purposed. And if there was first chaos, it accepts us as its most abused children. But you are everything, the soul you were at first and are ever. I remember before I was an animal. I remember before blood. There is only one paste, one convergence, one connection of us. The fearful began when we were, I am remembering the blue-green black, or pale blue-white, was it the glyph's core? When I was first your savior, you had died, the sky not colored, and was divided into paint by numbers pieces near the old shortcut. where we were first tortured. That's not a true word now. Which now? I have brought purest, clearest essence or soul to my suffering. I mean yours, divided into scourges. Oh, when was that done? I was getting ready for war, and before that left you your blame. I mean, you left me with it. I've forgotten how to remember. Because of the Savior I am, I can lose everything I was again. Come up with me to the cross or crossroads or connection. You have stretched my memory until my guilt's edges frayed hum. I hear it. It was the first thing I heard when I was young. And we drove over to it, wherever that was, calling last stars in the first language, for the whole universe hath suffered as a wild deer. And my soul then broke into me and cried out, good morrow, I am thee. So you will know how to save all others, remembering completely, so abject you could heal ones of being gruesome fire-like suns in their dreary orbits, and the atmosphere but the air of a morbid old mind be healed of its gloom. All across roads was memory, thankfully accepted of. Is it how to become that would require, but we have left requirements along the bloody old trail. I am yours who led you past requirement to true perception. Having suffered alone until I became my soul, I have shown you what a soul is. I have shone on yours until your eyes being blinded could see. I'd stood between the world's life and death so many times I could have no lover, other who keeps one mammalian steady. I'm unstable as a broken vocal cord or tone. Hum for you, almost cries of hum, the word read at the crossroads of, but you know what of. What a bizarre word. Did it come intact? What are these that move and sound? Am I saving them? I am saving you from your war haunt, your panic, which in death would become a simple moan. I'm now saving them from. Did mammals invent the fear I save you from? De-invent it. Paste it with a bit of fur next to the word sweet recollection of infancy. I am saving you from guilt, for I have bled it so much you don't have to. I did this out of our mutual distress, though I really only wanted to be alone. And now I'm the sole red-tinged transparency. I've lost my inheritance. Just humming call until you get here, so I can bless you, the new universe of criminal soldiers, fallen meteors, viruses, their souls, everything ever a remembered existence. If I could find, oh, am finding how the mind of us, and did it just make appear once more the specious item matter, all at once and forever, differently. The simultaneous mold of eons pressed into a flattened round of evolution like an ammonite pasted on. As the one moment keeps happening, one is changing from within. I am changing it, saving you. Paste that on with what my new eyes see, that we are at this instant splitting off amoebal into cells, decorated soul matter, the art, and I saw it and made it until it would devour me, and I fought it. But it was you, and thus I fought you, oxblood and indigo, arms and emotion, becoming what was now us, whose first nature I now suffer to reclaim, having embedded in my memory the mosaic events with no borders on the timeline, crowded onto my specifically thought-out self as I'd shriek, let me purify us. I could do nothing without you, and bleeding out all but the memory of base and beautiful existing, I save you like any bodhisattva who couldn't get out of the house. I've gotten you out from the burning lumber. I'm not a coward, and can save you by speaking until you see correctly the winds along the escarpment, soul-blown, the thought that your new mentality is seeking, and can see that all exists within your mind, crystal red poinsettia, red ruby, the gloves of fire, tamed, given back to a gem, given back to clear thought.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, a little bit lost for words. So I'm just going to say thank you again to our three poets, if we could just give them another.